Hello everybody, I'm KC, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk About. Today, let's talk about the Season 5 finale of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, the Cutie Remark. But before we start here, I want to give a shout out to Marvelandponder. She took over Let's Talk About in text form on my Tumblr a while ago to summarize her thoughts on Season 5. It's very thorough and well done, so I put a link in the description so you can check it out for yourselves. As for the finale, it certainly wasn't what I was expecting. Let's just dive right in because we have a lot to cover. The story begins with Twilight returning from a lecture in Canterlot to find Starlight glimmer in her castle. Starlight immediately casts a spell that sends them and Spike back in time so she can stop Rainbow Dash from performing the first Sonic Rain Boom. So, the season finale is about time travel, huh? I never would have guessed. Okay, joking aside, I was really excited when I saw the Comic-Con preview for this episode. The idea of what the main six would be like without the Sonic Rain Boom is one that's been flying around the fandom for a long time now. However, this episode focuses on what Equestria as a whole would be like without their friendship, and not so much what they would be like if they didn't make the decisions they did on that day. I personally don't have a problem with this, but I can see this being a deal breaker for some people. But like Equestria games, I'm judging the story this episode is telling and measuring the positives and negatives of that, rather than focusing exclusively on what the episode isn't. I'll admit that seeing the girls with the same cutie marks and all the alternate timelines was pretty confusing on my first watch through, but upon coming to the realization of what the focus of this episode was, I gave it a pass. So let's go more into what exactly happens in this episode. Starlight's various ways of stopping the Sonic Rain Boom causes different alternate futures, with different returning villains taking over Equestria each time. Joining the choir by saying my favorite was the first alternate future, with that war against King Sombra. However, the fact that King Sombra's epic conquest was first brings up my first problem with the episode. I feel like the alternate futures were backwards. I think the flow of the episode would have worked a lot better and the stakes would have been greater if these alternate futures were affected by each other. Kind of like in the Doctor Who episode Turn Left. In that episode, the Doctor's current companion, Donna Noble, is prevented from meeting him. This leads to the confrontation that happened in their first encounter, costing the Doctor his life, simply because she wasn't there to save him. About 2 seasons of events have gone by between their missed first meeting and this episode, so since the Doctor is gone, all the events that affected Earth happen one by one. Some move locations, and some plans are stopped, but there's never a happy ending. The stakes kept being raised, and things kept getting worse. Now, I don't expect this to be as intense as Turn Left, but I think the way these alternate futures were set up didn't raise the tension. After all, a war-torn Equestria is hard to top. Which is why I think we should have started with Nightmare Moon and worked from there. After all, one of the big criticisms of Nightmare Moon as a villain is that her plan of eternal night would eventually doom Equestria. So what if Nightmare Moon formed an alliance with Discord or Chrysalis to find a way to sustain the land without the sun in exchange for some land of their own or something? It could still lead to the war-torn Equestria we saw, not just with Sombra, but an alliance of villains spreading all over Equestria, or having them fight each other and the pony citizens. It would have raised the stakes and further emphasized how screwed Equestria is without the main six. As it stands, these futures were still cool to see, but personally, I was starting to lose the tension in part 2, and didn't really get it back until Twilight shows Starlight the last desolate future. That said, everything else about the alternate futures is awesome! I mean it, my complaint about the way the timelines were placed in the episode is truly my only complaint about them. Everything else about these concepts works so well. Sombra's future has incredible detail to it, from the warring ponies in the fields, to the few glimpses of civilian contributions we see, to discovering that Sugar Cube Corner is apparently under new management. That's probably the reason why it's the favorite among fans. It's the most fleshed out of the futures. Chrysalis's future has Decora as the leader of a rebel force against the Changelings. It's really cool seeing her take charge and looking after all these ponies. Not to mention seeing Chrysalis and the Changelings in more engaging combat than last time. Although, why didn't Chrysalis's voice have any modulation? Don't get me wrong, Kathleen Barr reprises her role and is just as great as she was last time. It's just something I thought was weird that no one seems to bring up. And while we sadly don't see that much of the outside world in Nightmare Moon's alternate future, what we do see is absolutely gorgeous. The design of her castle is very atmospheric and everything I'd imagine it would be, and Nightmare Moon herself looks much more menacing than her previous appearances. Not to mention the Timberwolves look amazing. Seriously, they finally managed to make the CG on these pine tree puppies look right. It's amazing the detail they crammed into these futures, even the quick ones. I mean, look at Discords. Not only do we have the return of Screwball up there, but did anyone else notice that Discord is holding a Twicane? Or a Discane, I guess. So not Decane, Discane. However, these alternate futures only take up about half the runtime. The rest is dedicated to Twilight's various attempts at trying to stop Starlight Glimmer. Some people have criticized the time travel logic here, that if Twilight and Starlight keep coming back to the same point in time, shouldn't they be running into multiple versions of themselves? Early in the episode, Starlight says that whenever Twilight casts a time travel spell, she gets sent back to the same moment Twilight does. To me, this implies the timeline resets every time the spell is cast. It's not a great explanation, and one that certainly could have been made a lot clearer in the same amount of time, but this is my best guess and it honestly doesn't really bother me. I am also willing to accept that because of this, they are immune to the effects of the missing Rainboom, especially considering we all know what Spike's fate is without the Rainboom, which is probably a bit too bleak for this show. What does bother me is how exactly did Starlight rewrite Star Swirl the Bearded's time travel spell? I thought rewriting a spell was a really rare thing. Isn't doing something like that how Twilight became a princess? Does this mean Starlight's going to become an alicorn? Probably not, but this is worth mentioning. Well, anyway, despite the scenes at the flight camp taking up almost as much of the time as the alternate futures, I honestly don't have much to say about them. With the exception of No Pony, once again, noticing that Twilight is an alicorn. Except for Dash. Once. And she kinda gets over it quickly. Though these segments did have my personal favorite joke in the episode. Having Dash stop the race to watch Twilight and Starlight fight. It's so something she would do, and her being annoyed the fight is over makes this scene for me. Speaking of Twilight and Rainbow Dash, did no one in animation realize how this face looked? Here's a hint.
Bad touch, strange adventure.
Well, whatever. Eventually Twilight has had enough and decides to pull Starlight back with her to see what the future will be like if her plan plays out, showing her the desolate wasteland formerly known as Equestria. For me, this is the most effective scene in the episode. The animation drains out all the color, the music cuts out so besides our characters you only hear the unbroken wind flapping. Not to mention the voice acting is wonderful here. How outraged and confused Starlight is, mixed with how tired Twilight sounds after not only seeing so many horrible futures, but how she's not surprised at how deserted this one is. After this, Starlight decides to tell Twilight why she feels this way to begin with. So, a lot of people have complained that Starlight Glimmer's backstory and reason for doing what she's doing is very underwhelming. From a logical standpoint, I agree. But we have to remember, Starlight's not thinking logically. Let's think about this. All Starlight knows is that she lost her best and apparently only friend because he got his cutie mark and moved away. I find it very easy to believe that she'd be that sad and bitter about this, especially at such a young age. It certainly explains the Equal Town. By the time she grows up, she makes it a mission that no one is hurt or separated by a superior cutie mark, and by now, she believes the only way to do that is to make every pony's cutie mark the same. Is this a logical step? No, but I'm not going to say this is bad writing if a character is acting purely through emotion. Sometimes I actually find it compelling when a character is driven by their emotions, even if they may not be making the smartest choices. After all, that feeling of trying to make sure that no one else has to go through what they did is what drives a lot of heroes. But you know that old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions? That's kind of what happened here. Unlike, say, Moondancer, who gave up on friendship when she was rejected, Starlight did want friendship again, but was trying to find a way to obtain it without anyone being superior, and truly believes that what she was doing was the right way to go about it. Starlight didn't have any malicious intentions at first, she just believed she was helping others find true friends. Personally, I wasn't really disappointed by this backstory like a lot of others, but I can easily see where these people are coming from. I think if they added a line saying Starlight tried to stay in touch, but Sunburst never responded because he moved on, then some people may have been more forgiving, and I think the story could have worked a lot better. But the best thing about this finale for me is how Twilight deals with Starlight. Over the past couple of seasons, some people have criticized how the main six solve their problems through big magical spectacles. A problem I personally don't have, but I can see where these people are coming from. Which is why I'm surprised more people aren't jumping for joy at how this problem was resolved. Twilight saves the day and stops Starlight Glimmer by talking to her, by trying her best to understand her and trying to get her to understand just how important true friendship is. I mean, Twilight certainly can't relate to a big change beyond their control, changing the dynamic between her and her friends, and working through that together or anything. This is my personal favorite scene in the episode. It's what Season 5 has been about the main six taking what they've learned about the magic of friendship and passing those lessons on to others. To ponies and creatures that have either forgotten how important friendship is, or have never really known to begin with. This is actually something I really admire about where the show has been going. Not a lot of shows have the main characters become mentors to others, of applying their own experiences to others on a regular basis. When a main character does take on this role, it's usually in a sequel series. But our beloved main six are in this position by the beginning of Season 5, and will continue to fill this role as the series goes on. A lot of people have also criticized that with Starlight Glimmer's turnaround, too many villains seem to be reformed lately. Which I would agree with almost anywhere else, but not here, not with this show. This show enforces the philosophy that, well, friendship is magic. So I'm not against the show trying to have the main characters befriend as many other characters as possible, especially if it's helping evil or just lost characters find a better path in life. So far, this approach has led to more interesting stories and characters, and I'm certainly not against that. I do agree that Starlight's reformation came with a bit too much acceptance, especially from the town she corrupted, but since this has been a criticism of almost every reformation in the show thus far, and once they were fleshed out more, people were more accepting, I'm gonna wait and see how her next appearance is handled in Season 6 to see how I feel about this. Overall, this season finale is frustratingly awesome. What problems I have with this two-parter I feel are things that could have been fixed and still kept in its 45-minute runtime. I think with maybe one more rewrite, we could have had the best two-parter of the series. The concept of stopping the rain boom is one that's been speculated since Cutie Mark Chronicles, so naturally, everyone who goes into this episode knowing the premise is going to come in with different expectations. And depending on how much you're willing to separate those expectations from what's presented, and how much of this premise you're willing to accept, your opinion will likely vary. There were a lot of things I enjoyed, and I thought the resolution was great for the reasons I've already given. While I wasn't as smitten with this finale as others, and while I didn't enjoy it as much as Twilight's Kingdom, there is still a lot to enjoy here. Especially considering it's the end of such a wonderful season of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, arguably the show's best. This season opened a lot of doors to possibilities for the staff, and I very eagerly await to see what they have in store for Season 6. Don't worry though, during the hiatus, I'll be talking more about MLP in future videos. Until then, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.